The alien ship came down through the clouds on a cold morning in March. It was the year 2347, and humanity had been reaching into the stars for almost 200 years. They had found empty worlds, dead planets, and the ruins of civilizations long gone. But they had never found anyone alive until now. Admiral Catherine Cole stood at the edge of the landing field in Geneva, watching the strange vessel descend. It was beautiful in a way that human ships never were. The hull seemed to be made of living crystal, shifting colors as it caught the light. It moved without sound, without any visible engines. Floating down like a leaf falling from a tree, she had been in the Navy for 30 years. She had fought pirates in the asteroid belt. She had led the defense of Mars during the food riots. She had seen things that would give most people nightmares. But nothing had prepared her for this moment. The ship touched down gently, and a door opened in its side. The beings that emerged were tall and thin, with skin that seemed to glow faintly blue. Their eyes were large and dark, like pools of ink. They wore robes of silver and white that flowed around them like water. The leader of the group stepped forward. He moved with a grace that made human movement look clumsy and rough. When he spoke, his voice was soft and musical, even through the translation device around his neck. "I am Ambassador Thelis of the Velrani people. We come in peace. We come seeking help." Cole stepped forward to meet him. "I am Admiral Catherine Cole of the United Earth Defense Force. Welcome to our world. What kind of help do you need?" The ambassador's dark eyes seemed to grow sad. "We need a place to hide. We need protection. We have been running for 300 of your years, and we can run no longer." The story that Thelis told was a terrible one. The Velrani had once been a great civilization, spreading across dozens of star systems. They were builders and artists, scientists and philosophers. They had created wonders that made human technology look like children's toys. But they had also made a choice long ago. They had decided that violence was wrong. They had destroyed all their weapons. They had disbanded their military. They had changed their very biology so that they could not feel anger or aggression. They believed that this would bring them peace. Instead, it had brought them death. The Krath had come without warning. They were a warrior species, bred for conquest. They saw the Velrani worlds, and they wanted them. When the Velrani tried to negotiate, the Krath laughed. When the Velrani tried to flee, the Krath hunted them down. For 3 centuries, the Velrani had been running. Every time they found a new home, the Krath would find them. Every time they built a new civilization, the Krath would destroy it. Billions of Velrani had died. Only a few 100,000 remained. "We have nowhere else to go," Thelis said, his voice breaking. "We have tried everything. We have begged. We have pleaded. We have offered them anything they wanted. But the Krath do not want anything from us except our extinction." Cole listened to all of this in silence. When the ambassador finished, she asked a simple question. "Why come to us? We are a young species. We have only been in space for a short time. What can we offer you?" Thelis looked at her with those dark, sad eyes. "We have watched you, Admiral. We have studied your history. You are a violent species. You have spent most of your existence fighting each other. Wars over land, wars over resources, wars over ideas. You have killed millions of your own kind." Cole felt her face grow hot. It was true, and it was shameful. "Yes, we have. But you have also done something that no other species we have encountered has done. You have stopped. You have looked at your violence and said no more. You have built something better. You have united your world. You have reached for the stars not to conquer, but to explore." The ambassador stepped closer. "And most importantly, Admiral, you have kept your weapons. You have kept your soldiers. You know how to fight. You simply choose not to unless you must. You think we can protect you? I think you are our only hope." The United Earth Council met for 3 days to discuss the Velrani request. There were arguments on both sides. Some said that helping the Velrani would bring the Krath to Earth. Others said that turning away refugees was morally wrong. Politicians shouted at each other. Scientists presented data. Military officers gave their assessments. Admiral Cole spoke last. "The Valroni made a choice to abandon violence," she said. "It was a noble choice, a beautiful choice, but it was the wrong choice because the universe is not noble or beautiful. The universe is dark and cold and full of things that want to hurt you." She looked around the chamber at the men and women who would decide the fate of two species. Humanity made a different choice. We learned to fight. We got very good at it. Too good sometimes. We almost destroyed ourselves more than once. But we also learned something else. We learned that strength without purpose is just destruction. We learned that the reason to be strong is to protect the weak. Cole's voice grew harder. The Valroni are weak. They cannot protect themselves. They came to us because they had no one else to turn to. If we send them away, they will die. All of them. An entire civilization will be wiped out because we were too afraid to help. She paused, letting her words sink in. And I do not believe humanity should be afraid either. We have spent centuries learning to be warriors. Now we have a chance to be guardians, to be the shield between the darkness and those who cannot defend themselves. The vote was close, but the decision was made. Humanity would help the Valroni. Within weeks, a new colony was established on a world at the edge of human space. The Valroni called it New Valara, and they began the slow process of rebuilding their civilization. They planted gardens and built cities. They created art and music and all the beautiful things they had been forced to abandon in their flight. And around them, humanity built something else. Admiral Cole stood in the orbital shipyard above New Valara. Watching the skeleton of a new battleship take shape, it was bigger than anything humanity had ever built before. It was armed with weapons that could crack a planet in half. It was crewed by men and women who had volunteered to stand between the Valroni and anything that might threaten them. Lieutenant Daniel Price stood beside her, watching the work crews move through the structure like ants building a nest. "Do you think they will come?" he asked the Krath. Cole nodded slowly. "They will come. The Valroni have been running for 300 years, and the Krath have never stopped chasing them. They will come? And when they do?" The Admiral turned to face him, and there was something hard and cold in her eyes. Something that had been sleeping for a long time, waiting for a reason to wake up. "When they come, Lieutenant, they will learn something important. They will learn that humanity does not run, and they will learn that the price of threatening those under our protection is higher than they are willing to pay." She looked back at the battleship, at the weapons being installed, at the armor being welded into place. The Valroni wanted peace. We are going to give it to them. But first, we are going to have to teach the Krath what peace costs. 2 years passed, and the colony of New Valara grew into something beautiful. The Valroni had a gift for making things grow. Where humans saw empty land, they saw potential. Where humans built square buildings of steel and concrete, the Valroni coaxed structures from living crystal that seemed to sing when the wind blew through them. Admiral Catherine Cole visited the surface whenever she could. She would walk through the gardens that stretched for miles, past fountains that made music, under trees that glowed softly in the dark. It reminded her why she had agreed to this mission, why she had given up a comfortable retirement to stand guard over a planet of pacifists. But she never forgot what was coming. The defense network had taken 2 years to build. A ring of orbital stations surrounded New Valara, each one armed with enough weapons to destroy a small fleet. Early warning satellites stretched across the nearby star systems, watching for any sign of the Krath. And at the center of it all, the Third Fleet waited. 12 battleships, 40 cruisers, over 100 destroyers and frigates. It was the largest military force humanity had ever assembled in one place. It was also the most advanced. Engineers had spent 2 years improving every system, every weapon, every piece of armor. If the Krath were coming, humanity would be ready. Commander Samuel Grant commanded the lead battleship, the Endurance. It was 2 kilometers long, covered in armor thick enough to stop almost anything, and armed with weapons that could fire accurately across millions of miles. Grant had spent 20 years in the Navy, and he had never seen anything like it. "She is beautiful," said Lieutenant Maria Santos, his second in command. She was young, barely 30, but she had proven herself in the border skirmishes against pirates. Grant trusted her completely. "She is a weapon," Grant replied. "And weapons are only beautiful when they do not have to be used." Santos nodded. "Do you think we will have to use her?" "Ambassador Thelis says the Krath always find them. Always. They have some way of tracking the Velrani across space. It might take months or years, but they will come." "And when they do?" Grant looked out the viewport at the planet below, at the gardens and cities and all the peaceful people going about their lives without any idea how to defend themselves. "When they do, we will be here. That is the promise we made." The warning came on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. Admiral Cole was in her office aboard the Endurance, reviewing supply reports, when the alarm sounded. She was on the bridge within minutes, her heart pounding but her face calm. She had been waiting for this moment for 2 years. "Report," she said, sliding into the command chair. "Gravitational disturbance at the edge of the system," the sensor officer reported. "Multiple contacts dropping out of faster-than-light travel. I am counting. Admiral, I am counting over 300 ships." 300. Cole had expected a large force, but this was more than even her worst predictions. The Krath were not taking any chances. They wanted to crush this new threat before it could grow any stronger. Sound General Quarters. "All ships to battle stations. And get me Ambassador Thelis on the communicator." The Velrani leader appeared on the screen moments later. He looked older than he had 2 years ago. The hope that had been in his eyes when he first arrived was gone, replaced by a tired resignation. "They have come," he said. It was not a question. 300 ships. Maybe more. Thelis closed his eyes. "Then it is over. Admiral, please take your people and go. The Krath will accept your surrender if you abandon us. You do not have to die for our sake, Ambassador," Cole said, her voice hard. "I have spent 2 years building this fleet. I have spent 2 years training these soldiers. I did not do that so we could run away at the first sign of trouble. Cannot win. The Krath have conquered 100 worlds. They have destroyed species far more powerful than yours. Maybe, but they have never fought humanity before." She cut the transmission and turned to her crew. They were young, most of them. They had never fought a real battle against a real enemy. But there was no fear in their eyes. "Only determination, ladies and gentlemen," Cole said. "The enemy we have been preparing for has arrived. They outnumber us 3-1. They have been conquering worlds for centuries. They believe they cannot be stopped." She stood up from her chair and walked to the front of the bridge where she could see the stars through the viewport. "They are wrong. Today we show them what happens when they threaten people under our protection. Today we show them that humanity does not surrender. Today we show them that peace has a price, and we are willing to pay it." She turned back to face her crew. "All ships, advance to intercept. We are going to meet them head-on." The Third Fleet moved as one, 12 battleships leading the way, cruisers and destroyers spreading out in a protective formation around them. They had trained for this moment 1,000 times. They knew their roles. They knew what was expected of them. The Krath fleet approached in a wedge formation, their ships dark and angular, covered in weapons. They did not attempt to communicate. They did not issue demands. They simply came forward. Expecting the same easy victory they had won 100 times before, they were about to learn that this time was different. "Enemy fleet entering weapons range," Santos reported. "All batteries. Fire at will." The Endurance shuddered as her main guns opened fire. Massive projectiles accelerated to incredible speeds, crossing the distance between the fleets in seconds. Energy weapons followed. Beams of concentrated destruction that could cut through armor like paper. The first Krath ship exploded in a flash of light. Then another. Then another. But the Krath fired back. Their weapons were different, designed for different purposes, but they were just as deadly. The destroyer Kennedy took 3 hits and broke apart. The cruiser Artemis lost power and began to drift. Cole watched her display, tracking the flow of battle. Ships were dying on both sides, but the Kraths were losing more. Their formation was beginning to break apart as human ships punched holes through their lines. "Commander Grant, Take second wing and flank their command ship. Hit their shield generators. Understood, Admiral. Grant led his squadron in a sweeping arc around the enemy formation. The Krath tried to stop them, but they were too slow, too focused on the main battle. Grant's fighters dove toward the enemy flagship, their weapons blazing. Shields are down on the Krath command ship, Santos reported. Cole smiled grimly. All batteries concentrate fire on their flagship. End this. 8 battleships turned their weapons on a single target. The Krath flagship, a vessel that had led the conquest of dozens of worlds, disappeared in a ball of fire that could be seen from the surface of New Valara. With their flagship gone, their formation collapsed completely. Ships tried to flee, but human destroyers hunted them down. Ships tried to surrender. There was no one to surrender to because the fleet was not taking prisoners. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, nearly 200 Krath ships had been destroyed. The rest had fled. Humanity had won. Cole stood on the observation deck looking down at New Valara. The gardens were still there. The cities were still standing. The Valrani were still alive. Behind her, the door opened, and Ambassador Thelis entered. "You won," he said, wonder in his voice. "You actually won." "We did." "How?" "They have never been defeated." "Never." Cole turned to face him. "Because we fight differently than anyone else they have faced. We do not fight to survive. We do not fight for territory. We fight for each other, for the people we love, for the people who need protecting." She looked back at the planet. "Your people wanted peace, Ambassador. Today, we helped you keep it." The news of the Battle of New Valara spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. For the first time in 3 centuries, the Krath had been defeated. A young species from an unknown corner of space had done what no one else had managed to do. They had stood against the conquerors and won. Within weeks, ships began arriving at Earth. Admiral Catherine Cole stood in the observation lounge of the orbital station, watching another alien vessel approach. This one was long and silver, shaped like a needle, with lights that pulsed along its length like a heartbeat. The Karathi Collective, Ambassador Thelis said, standing beside her. "They were conquered by the Krath 400 years ago. We thought they were extinct. Apparently not." The Korathi were strange beings. They had no solid form, just collections of floating metallic spheres that moved together like a flock of birds. When they spoke, the spheres vibrated and hummed, creating sounds that the translation devices struggled to interpret. But their message was clear. They had been hiding for centuries, waiting for a chance to strike back against the Krath. Now they had found one. They wanted to join humanity's fight. They were not alone. Over the next few months, more species emerged from hiding. The shattered were beings of living crystal who could communicate across vast distances using some form of light-based technology. The Greenwalkers were plant-like creatures who had once covered entire worlds before the Krath burned them away. The Deep Ones came from a water world and had to use special suits to survive in the air. But they brought knowledge of shipbuilding that made human. Engineers weep with joy. Each species had its own story of suffering. Each had lost worlds and people to the Krath, and each saw in humanity something they had never seen. A species willing to fight not for conquest, but for protection. The alliance was born in a simple ceremony on New Valara. Representatives from every species stood together in the gardens the Valroni had built, under skies that human warships had defended. They signed a treaty that bound them together in common cause. Commander Samuel Grant was assigned to the New Alliance Military Academy. It was his job to train officers from all the different species in human combat tactics. He had never imagined he would be teaching warfare to beings made of floating metal spheres and walking plants, but he did his best. "The key to fighting is not weapons," he told a classroom full of alien beings. "Weapons are tools, nothing more. The key to fighting is here." He tapped his chest. "It is the willingness to keep going when everything seems lost. It is the refusal to give up." A Karathi officer, its sphere spinning slowly, asked a question. "Commander, our people abandoned resistance long ago. We learned that fighting the Krath only brought more death. How can we fight now after so many generations of peace? Grant thought about the question carefully. It was a good question. It deserved a good answer. When I was a child, he said, my father taught me to fight. Not because he wanted me to hurt people, but because he wanted me to be able to protect the people I loved. He told me that strength without purpose is just violence, but strength with purpose is justice. He walked to the center of the room, looking at each of the alien officers in turn. You abandoned fighting because it brought death. But death came anyway, did it not? The Krath killed your people whether you fought or not. The only difference was that when you did not fight, you could not protect anyone. The room was silent. We do not fight because we love war. We fight because we love the people war threatens. We fight so that those who cannot fight do not have to. That is the purpose. That is the justice. The alliance grew stronger every month. Human engineers worked with shattered scientists to develop new weapons. Karathi manufacturing techniques allowed them to build ships faster than ever before. Deep One designs made those ships tougher and more powerful, but it was not enough just to defend. Admiral Cole knew that, as long as the Krath Empire existed, they would keep coming. They would rebuild their fleets and try again. The only way to truly protect the Alliance was to end the threat completely. She stood before the Alliance Council, a gathering of representatives from every member species. The chamber was filled with beings of every shape and size, from the towering green walkers to the tiny flying creatures called the Whispered. All of them had come because humanity had offered them something no one else ever had: hope. The Krath are not going to stop, Cole said, her voice carrying through the chamber. We defeated them once, but they are already rebuilding. In a few years, they will be back with an even larger fleet. We can wait for them to come and fight another defensive battle, or we can take the war to them. The Velrani representative, an elderly being who had survived 3 separate Krath attacks on his people, spoke first. You are proposing an invasion of Krath space? I am proposing that we end this war before it destroys us all. The Krath have ruled a quarter of the galaxy through fear. It is time they learned what fear feels like. The cost would be enormous, the Korathi representative said. Ships, soldiers, resources. The cost of doing nothing would be higher. The Krath will not accept defeat. They will not negotiate. They will not stop. We can either fight them on our terms, or wait until they are strong enough to fight us on theirs. The debate lasted for hours. Every species had concerns. Every species had fears. But in the end, they all remembered why they had joined the Alliance in the first place. They had joined because they were tired of running. They had joined because they wanted to stop being victims. The vote was unanimous. The Alliance would go to war. Admiral Cole spent the next year preparing for the largest military operation in the history of the galaxy. Ships were built by the thousands. Soldiers were trained from every member species. Supply lines were established across hundreds of light years, and through it all, she never forgot what she was fighting for. She visited New Valara one last time before the offensive began. The gardens were even more beautiful now, spreading across entire continents. The Velrani had built something wonderful here, something worth protecting. Ambassador Thelis met her at the landing field. You are really going to do it, he said. You are going to attack the Krath in their own territory. Someone has to. My people could never have done what you were doing. We do not have the capacity for it. Cole looked at him with something like understanding. Your people created all of this, she said, gesturing at the gardens around them. You created beauty and peace and life. That is not a weakness, Ambassador. That is a gift, but it could not save us. No, that is our job. She put a hand on his shoulder. You gave us something to protect, something worth fighting for. Without that, all our strength would mean nothing. She looked up at the sky, where the Alliance fleet was gathering. The Velrani wanted peace. We are going to make sure you get it, no matter what it costs. The Luce watched her walk back to her shuttle, this human warrior who had become the defender of 100 species. He still did not fully understand humanity. He did not understand how they could be so violent and so compassionate at the same time. But he was grateful for them. more grateful than he could ever express. Because of them, his people had a future. Because of them, they would finally know peace. The invasion of Krathspace began on a morning that would be remembered across the galaxy for 1,000 years. Admiral Catherine Cole stood on the bridge of the Endurance. Watching the fleet form up around her, it was the largest military force ever assembled. Over 5,000 warships from 20 different species, crewed by soldiers who had once been enemies but were now brothers and sisters in arms. The Krath Empire had ruled through terror for centuries. They had crushed every species that stood against them. They believed they were invincible. They were about to learn how wrong they were. "All ships report ready, Admiral," Commander Samuel Grant reported from his station. He had been promoted to her second-in-command after the Battle of New Valara. There was no one she trusted more. "Then let us begin. All ships, engage faster than light drives. Target the Krath outer colonies." The fleet vanished in a flash of light, crossing distances that would take normal ships years to travel in mere moments. When they emerged, they were in the heart of enemy territory. The first Krath colony world fell within hours. The defenders were caught completely by surprise. They had never imagined that anyone would be bold enough to attack them in their own space. By the time they realized what was happening, Alliance soldiers were already landing on the surface. Lieutenant Maria Santos led the ground assault. She had been born on Mars, raised in the cramped tunnels beneath the surface, and had joined the Navy to see the stars. Now she was fighting on alien worlds she had never imagined existed. "Push forward," she ordered her troops. "Secure the communication center. We need to cut off their distress signal." The Krath soldiers fought hard. They were bred for war, their bodies modified over generations to be stronger and faster than any natural creature. But the Alliance soldiers had something the Krath did not. They had something to fight for beyond conquest. Santos watched a Korathi officer lead a charge against a fortified position, its metal spheres spinning around it like a shield. A Greenwalker medic dragged wounded soldiers to safety, its vine-like limbs gentle despite their strength. A human marine stood back to back with a deep one, each covering the other against enemy fire. This was what the Alliance meant. Not just ships and soldiers, but beings of every kind fighting together for a common cause. The communication center fell. The distress signal was cut off, and the Krath defenders, seeing that no help was coming, surrendered. It was the first time in recorded history that Krath soldiers had surrendered to anyone. Admiral Cole watched the reports come in from her command center. The first phase of the operation had been a complete success. 3 outer colonies had been captured with minimal losses. The Krath defenders had been so shocked by the attack that they had barely been able to organize resistance, but she knew it would not last. The Krath would recover from their surprise. They would gather their forces. They would strike back with everything they had. "Signal from the Krath command," her communications officer reported. "They want to negotiate." Cole raised an eyebrow. The Krath did not negotiate. They demanded surrender and destroyed anyone who refused. The fact that they were asking to talk meant they were scared. "Good, put them through." The face that appeared on her screen was reptilian, scaled and scarred. High Commander Verkoth, the supreme military leader of the Krath Empire. He had conquered more worlds than Cole had visited. He had killed more people than she could count. He was the monster that children on 100 worlds were taught to fear. "Human," he growled, his voice like gravel. "You have made a mistake. Turn back now, and we will allow your species to survive." "That is generous of you," Cole replied calmly. "But I think we will keep coming. You cannot defeat us. We are the Krath. We have ruled this region of space for 1,000 years. We have crushed every enemy who dared to stand against us. You have never faced the Alliance before." Verkoth laughed, a harsh and ugly sound. "Your alliance is nothing. A collection of weak species who were too afraid to fight alone. When we destroy you, they will scatter like frightened animals." Cole leaned forward in her chair. "Let me tell you something about humanity, High Commander. We spent most of our history fighting each other. We got very good at it. We developed weapons that could destroy our entire planet. We came very close to extinction more than once." She paused, letting the words sink in. But we survived. We learned. And we brought all that knowledge, all that experience, all that capacity for destruction with us when we came to the stars. We do not want to use it. We would rather live in peace. But if someone threatens the people under our protection, we will unleash everything we have. She stood up, her eyes hard. You want war, High Commander? We will give you war. But not the kind you are used to. Not conquest. Not terror. We fight to protect. We fight for people we have never met. We fight for species who cannot fight for themselves. And we will not stop until the threat is ended. Then you will die. Maybe, but we will take you with us. She cut the transmission and turned to her officers. Continue the offensive. Hit them hard and fast. Do not give them time to recover. The war that followed was brutal. The Alliance pushed deeper into Krath territory, capturing colony after colony, freeing species that had been enslaved for generations. The Krath fought back with everything they had, throwing fleet after fleet against the invaders. Battles raged across dozens of star systems. Ships were destroyed. Soldiers died. The cost was terrible, but the Alliance kept coming. Commander Grant led the assault on a major Krath shipyard, a squadron weaving through enemy fire to destroy the construction facilities. Lieutenant Santos liberated a slave world, freeing millions of beings who had never known freedom. Admiral Cole directed the overall campaign, moving pieces across a board that spanned light years, and slowly, inevitably, the Krath Empire began to crumble. The turning point came at the Battle of the Void. The Krath had gathered their remaining fleets for one final stand, over 2,000 ships forming a defensive line around their homeworld. They believed that if they could stop the Alliance here, they could buy time to rebuild. Cole looked at the tactical display, studying the enemy formation. It was impressive. Any other enemy would have been terrified. Signal all ships, she said. This is the final battle. Beyond those ships is the Krath homeworld. Beyond that is peace for the entire galaxy. Every species in this alliance has suffered because of the Krath. Today, we end it. The Alliance fleet advanced. Ships from 20 different species, crewed by beings who had once been strangers, but were now family. Moving as one toward the enemy. The battle was the largest in galactic history. Ships exploded on both sides. Thousands died in moments. The space around the Krath homeworld became a graveyard of broken vessels. But the Alliance had something the Krath did not. They had unity. They had purpose. They had each other. When the Krath flagship fell, its reactor breaching in a massive explosion, the remaining enemy ships began to surrender. One by one, they powered down their weapons and signaled their defeat. The war was over. Cole sat in her command chair, exhausted beyond measure. Around her, officers were cheering, embracing each other, crying with relief. They had done it. They had actually done it. Grant appeared beside her, his face showing the same fatigue she felt. We won, he said quietly. We did. What happens now? Cole looked at the Krath homeworld on her display. Millions of beings lived there, beings who had known nothing but conquest their entire lives. Now we do the hard part, she said. Now we build peace. The Treaty of New Valara was signed on the 3rd anniversary of the first battle. In a chamber overlooking the gardens where it had all begun, representatives from every species in the Alliance stood witness as the document that would reshape the galaxy was completed. Admiral Catherine Cole signed on behalf of humanity. Her hand was steady, though she felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her. 3 years of war. Millions dead. Entire worlds changed forever. All of it led to this moment. The new Krath leadership signed next. High Commander Varakath was gone, killed in the final battle. His replacement was younger, less scarred by centuries of conquest. He looked at Cole with something that might have been respect. You could have destroyed us, he said quietly after the ceremony was over. You had the power. Why did you not use it? Cole considered the question. It was a good one. Many in the Alliance had wanted exactly that. The Krath had caused so much suffering. It would have been easy to justify their destruction. Because that is not why we fight, she said finally. We fight to protect, not to destroy. If we had killed all the Krath, we would have become no better than you were. We will never understand you. Your species makes no sense to us. Maybe not. But you do not have to understand us. You just have to know that we will be watching. If you threaten anyone again, we will be back. The Krath leader nodded slowly. We will remember. The years that followed the war were years of rebuilding. The Krath Empire was dissolved. Conquered species were freed. Worlds that had been stripped of resources were given help to recover. It was hard work, often frustrating, sometimes seeming impossible, but the Alliance held together. Commander Samuel Grant retired from active service and took a position at the Alliance Academy, training the next generation of officers. He found that he enjoyed teaching more than fighting. It gave him hope to see young beings from all the different species learning to work together. Lieutenant Maria Santos was promoted to captain, an admiral. She spent most of her career patrolling the former Krath territories, making sure the peace was kept. She never forgot the first battle. The first time she had fought alongside aliens who had become her friends. And Admiral Catherine Cole, the woman who had started it all, returned to New Valara. She was old now, her hair white and her body tired. But her mind was still sharp, and her heart was still strong. She walked through the gardens she had helped protect, marveling at how they had grown over the years. Ambassador Thelis met her there, as he always did when she visited. He was old too by Velrani standards. His once blue skin faded to a pale silver, but his eyes were still bright, still filled with the wonder that had been absent when they first met. "It is beautiful, is it not?" he said, gesturing at the gardens around them. "We have spread across 3 worlds now. Our population has grown tenfold. Our children have never known fear." "That was always the goal," Cole replied. "Your people wanted peace. We helped you get it. You did more than that. You taught us something important." The Luce turned to face her, his expression serious. "We believed that peace meant the absence of conflict. We thought that by giving up the ability to fight, we would be safe. We were wrong. Peace is not the absence of conflict," Cole agreed. "Peace is what happens when someone is willing to stand between the darkness and the light." "Yes, exactly." Delis looked up at the sky, where Alliance ships still patrolled, still watching for threats. "We could not be that someone. We do not have it in us. But you did, and because of you, we have our peace." They walked together in silence for a while, 2 old beings enjoying the beauty around them. The gardens were full of life, Velrani children playing in the fountains, Alliance officers from 6 species taking shore leave, even a few Krath who had come to learn what they had never understood about their former enemies. "I have been thinking about the future," Thelis said eventually. "When you and I are gone, what will happen? Will the peace last?" Cole considered the question. It was one she had asked herself many times. "I do not know," she admitted. "History teaches us that peace is fragile, that it has to be protected and renewed by every generation. But I have hope. Hope. Look around you, Ambassador. Beings from 20 different species, living together in peace, working together, learning from each other. That never happened before humanity came to the stars. We made it possible." She stopped walking and turned to face him. "When we first met, you asked me why humanity agreed to help your people. Do you remember what I said? You said it was because we asked. Because turning away someone in need is not who you are. That is true. But it is not the whole truth." Cole smiled, her weathered face softening. "The whole truth is that we needed you as much as you needed us. We had strength, but we had lost our purpose. We had forgotten why we learned to fight in the first place." She looked out over the gardens, at all the life that flourished because of choices made years ago. "You reminded us. You gave us something worth protecting. And in doing so, you made us better than we were." Delis was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "My people have a saying. The greatest gift is the gift of meaning. You gave us peace, Admiral. But we gave you meaning. Perhaps that is why the universe brought us together. Perhaps. They stood together as the sun set over New Valara. Two representatives of very different species, united by something deeper than biology or culture. They had started as strangers, become allies, ended as friends. The galaxy stretched out above them, filled with stars that had once been symbols of fear and now were symbols of hope. The Krath were contained. The alliance was strong. And somewhere out there, new species were looking up at the sky and wondering if they were alone. They were not. They never had been. And when they reached out, when they asked for help, when they needed protection, humanity would be there. Just as it had always been. Just as it always would be. Because that was the lesson of New Valara. That was the truth that the Velrani had taught humanity, and that humanity had taught the galaxy. Peace was precious. Peace was worth fighting for. And the strongest peace was the one guarded by those willing to stand in the darkness, while others could live in the light. Admiral Cole looked up at the stars one last time, thinking of all the beings she had served with, all the battles she had fought, all the lives she had helped save. They wanted peace, she said softly. So we supplied both. Just in case. Thelis nodded, understanding completely.
Yes.
Just in case, he agreed. And together they watched the stars come out, standing guard over a galaxy that finally knew what peace truly meant.